The twisted wreck of the Andersons' SUV lay hunched against the slope like a wounded beast, metal groaning under the storm's relentless assault. Thunder cracked above the Blue Ridge Mountains, briefly illuminating the crumpled frame and the steaming hood. Scattered across the ravine were fragments of a life-shattered glass, a storybook torn in two, a child's stuffed lion soaked by rain. And farther from the wreck, a baby car seat lay on its side, miraculously upright again, cradling a motionless infant. Max stepped out from the trees, fur darkened by the rain muscles, taut under his lean, survival-hardened frame. His ears twitched at every crack of thunder. Once the pride of a county search and rescue team, he had been surviving alone in the wilderness ever since his handler abandoned him months ago. His scars told of battles and solitude. But as he neared the crash site, his steps slowed, guided not by instinct, but by memory. A scent pulled him forward, metal gasoline blood, and something soft and human beneath it all. His eyes locked onto the car seat. He approached carefully, breathing in the baby's warmth beneath the cold. The infant's chest moved shallow, but steady. Max's breath misted above the child, the rain flattening his ears, but he didn't move away. He leaned in and nudged the soft blanket covering the baby, the fabric trembling slightly as the wind shifted. A crack of fire snapped through the night. Flames erupted at the SUV's base. Max flinched, but didn't flee. His gaze darted from the car seat to the growing fire, then back again. There were no other survivors, no handler to tell him what to do. Just this baby, just now. He gripped the edge of the blanket in his teeth slowly, carefully, and began to pull. Behind him, the vehicle ignited in a deafening roar, sending shards of flame into the sky. But Max kept pulling, step by step, inch by inch, dragging the baby away from the blaze. The baby's blanket snagged on rocks and roots, forcing Max to pause and adjust his grip again and again. His jaw ached, but he didn't stop. Rain lashed the ground around them, turning the slope to mud, but he pressed forward, inching the car seat out of danger. Lightning lit the landscape in flickering white, revealing not just the wreckage, but the sheer drop they had avoided by a miracle of luck and timing. Behind them, the SUV was engulfed. Black smoke billowed into the sky as flames danced across the crushed frame, hungrily devouring everything that had once been a family's vacation dream. Max didn't look back. He moved with purpose, guided by terrain he had roamed for months. A cave, a hollow beneath a cluster of rocks hidden by ferns and pine, lay a half-mile ahead. He had weathered storms there before. He could do it again. The journey took nearly an hour. Mud slicked his paws. The baby whimpered once, a tiny fragile sound, but otherwise remained limp. Max paused only to readjust the blanket and ensure the car seat didn't tip. His legs trembled from effort, but he didn't stop. Finally, the narrow cave came into view. Dry needles carpeted the floor, leftovers from Max's last stay. He pulled the seat all the way to the back, where wind and rain couldn't reach. Only then did he let go. The German shepherd stood panting for a moment, his chest heaving. He stared at the infant, studying the small, pale face beneath the soft hat now askew. The baby's breath was shallow, but steady. Rain had soaked his clothes. A thin trickle of dried blood streaked down from his temple. Max lay down beside the car seat. No training had prepared him for this. But as he curled his body around the infant, his warmth began to seep into the child's shivering form. The wild dog, scarred, alone, forgotten, closed his eyes, but did not sleep. He was watching and guarding, just like he used to. Morning crept over the mountains in hushed tones of gray. At the cave's mouth, mist curled through the air, like ghosts exhaling. Inside, Max stirred. His body ached from yesterday's effort, but instinct pushed him upright. He turned to check on the baby. Noah's breathing was ragged now, his cheeks flushed with fever. His tiny fists twitched in his sleep, the soaked clothes still clinging to his body. Max pressed his nose to the baby's forehead, hot. Too hot. The dog's ears twitched. Outside, the storm had passed, but cold still clung to the earth. Max stepped from the cave paws, crunching leaves, and returned moments later with mouthfuls of pine needles and dry brush. Trip after trip, he padded through the woods collecting debris. By midday, he'd built a rough nest around the car seat layers of leaves, bark, and needles. Not perfect, but warmer. Noah stirred with a weak cry. Max was at his side instantly, nose nudging the tiny fingers. The baby whimpered, eyes fluttering open. For a moment, confusion, fear, then quiet. He blinked up at Max's amber eyes and reached with clumsy fingers, curling them deep into the shepherd's thick neck fur. Max didn't move, not when the grip tightened, not even when tiny nails scratched his skin. Instead, he pressed closer, a shared breath, a silent vow. When the baby finally drifted back to sleep, Max slipped from the cave. He needed water. A stream trickled not far from here. He remembered its sound. At the cave entrance, a piece of curved bark lay wedged against a rock. Max sniffed it, then lifted it between his jaws and trotted to the stream. He dipped it low, letting water collect, then returned, moving carefully, balancing the makeshift bowl. Back at the cave, he nudged the bark beside the car seat. A few drops sloshed onto Noah's hand. The baby's stirred fingers touching the wetness, then curling toward his mouth. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Trip after trip to the stream. Water gathered in bark. Spilled, sloshed, carried, delivered. Each time he returned, he checked Noah's face. He listened to every breath. He sniffed for signs of worsening fever. His body never fully relaxed. Even when he lay beside the car seat, warming the infant with his side, his ears remained perked, swiveling at the faintest forest noise. By late afternoon, the air had chilled again. Noah whimpered in his sleep, soft, strained cries that twisted something inside Max. He nosed the child, gently licking the tiny forehead, once the way he had been trained to stimulate unresponsive victims. The baby moaned softly but didn't wake. Max shifted his body closer. He wasn't sure if it was the right move, but warmth seemed to help. In the absence of food, in the absence of medicine, warmth was what he had. Outside the cave, searchers were moving, calling names, trudging through the wilderness, but their voices were still distant, muted by hills and trees. Max heard them faintly. The word Noah meant nothing to him, but the tones were urgent, human. He hesitated. If he barked, maybe they'd hear him. But what if they didn't? What if someone else did? The thought of leaving Noah alone chilled him more than the wind ever could. He stayed. That night he kept his vigil again. He licked rainwater off the cave walls. He curled tighter around the baby. His own hunger clawed at his gut, but he ignored it. A falling branch snapped nearby. Max rose to his feet with a growl low in his throat. He sniffed the air. Another animal had passed close. A predator, maybe. The scent of danger hung faintly on the breeze. He returned to Noah's side. His tail curled protectively around the baby's car seat. The cave walls glowed faintly in moonlight. Noah slept unwell but alive. Max didn't sleep. He watched. He listened. And in his silence, a purpose burned brighter than fear. Miles away, the search teams scoured the ravine. Rain-soaked uniforms, muddied boots, voices hoarse from shouting. They found the wreckage. They found James and Sarah still buckled in. They found Emily nearby, her small hand still wrapped around a drenched storybook. But the baby, gone. Sheriff Williams stood at the edge of the search zone, brow furrowed, radio crackling at his hip. One missing. A baby. Noah Anderson. His voice was low, grim, possibly ejected. There's a chance, a glimmer. That's all they had. They expanded the grid, called in canine teams, volunteers, rangers. Still, it wasn't enough. By midday, the tragedy reached William Anderson, Noah's grandfather, retired Army colonel, weathered face, spine straight as ever. He drove 3 hours without pause, his grief hidden behind clipped speech and a soldier's bearing. He stepped out of the truck, holding back the storm inside him. "I'm joining the search," he said. His voice left no room for refusal. Sheriff Williams placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Anderson, I've led recon through jungles in Kandahar," he interrupted. "This is my grandson. I'm going." They handed him a radio. A flashlight paired him with a ranger. He didn't waste time on emotion, only movement, purpose. He joined the grid eyes, sweeping the underbrush, scanning every thicket, every trail. "Noah," the teams called. "Noah." Their cries echoed through the mountain's desperate, hopeful hollow. But not all heroes wore uniforms. Less than 2 miles away, Max stirred again. Noah had grown quieter. His cries were thin now, no strength behind them. Max knew this sound. He had heard it before in lost hikers, in fading lives. The baby's fever had worsened. Max fetched more water, bark bowl after bark bowl. But even that was not enough. A faint scent hit his nose, sharp, pungent, unfamiliar. Bear. Nearby. Fresh. Max's hackles rose. He stepped outside, ears forward. The scent wasn't just near, it was close. Not a moment to lose. He marked trees, rocks, circled the cave with his own scent, drawing invisible lines in the forest. Territory. Warning. Then he returned to the baby and lay beside him. If the bear came closer, Max would be ready. He had to do more. A distant sound caught his attention. Voices again. Louder this time. Closer. Max stood, ears twitching. The word Noah was repeated. And then another sound. A name he hadn't heard in months. Max. He froze. That word cut through the haze of wilderness and pain, like a whistle from his old handler. Max. It reached into something long buried, something loyal, something trained. Without hesitation, he turned from the cave and began to run. His paws thudded softly against the earth muscles, screaming with exhaustion. But he moved with purpose. Closer to the voices, to help, to hope. Halfway there, he stopped beneath a pine and barked sharp, insistent, trained. A pause in the voices, then silence. Then they faded again. Too far, too late. They hadn't heard him. Max lingered for moments longer, chest heaving. Then he turned back to Noah. He returned slower than he left, every step weighed down by frustration and fatigue. When he reached the cave again, Noah hadn't moved. His tiny chest still rose and fell, but barely. Max lay beside him again, resting his head next to the car seat. He had tried. He would try again. But night was falling fast. At the base camp, Sheriff Williams delivered a new report. Drag marks had been found near where the car seat landed, not random, but careful. Alongside them, large paw prints. German shepherd-sized. Williams' hands trembled. He pulled out an old photo on his phone, a Christmas memory. Sarah smiling. Noah in front, leaning into a giant German shepherd. Max, their old rescue dog, the one who vanished in these very mountains months ago. He knew, Noah William whispered. If he found him, he won't leave him. The sheriff looked up. Then we're not just looking for a baby. We're looking for a dog. A rescue dog. Noah was too still. The baby's cries had stopped altogether, a silence far more terrifying than any mountain lion's roar. His lips were cracked. His breaths came in short, rattling bursts. The heat radiating from his body was alarming. Max licked Noah's cheek gently, trying to wake him. Nothing. Outside, the forest seemed to hold its breath, until a new sound slithered through the trees, a low predatory growl. Max's head snapped toward the entrance, muscles tight, body low, every nerve on fire. He knew that scent. Mountain lion. It was close, hunting, drawn by the weakness inside this cave. Max rose, stepping between the entrance and the car seat. His shoulder still ached from past wounds, but his stance was unwavering. His eyes locked on the brush ahead. Then he saw it. The lion emerged slowly, like a shadow peeled from the forest floor. Its golden eyes met Max's. It crouched. Max didn't wait. He lunged first. The clash was savage. Teeth tore. Claws ripped. Max dodged the first pounce, snapping at the lion's leg. The cat spun, slashing Max across the shoulder, drawing blood instantly. Pain exploded in his side, but he didn't back down. He led the lion away from the cave, snarling, charging, retreating, always luring it just far enough to protect Noah. The fight stretched into brutal minutes. Max was outmatched in size, but not in purpose. Every time he was knocked down, he got up again. He had to. A final gamble. Max ran toward a fallen log vaulted to the top, and as the lion leapt after him, he launched. Jaws aimed for the throat. They connected. He bit deep. The lion howled claws, raking Max's abdomen deep, tearing wounds. But Max held on even as his legs buckled. The lion collapsed beneath him. It didn't rise again. Max staggered back, panting, drenched in blood, some his, some not. Every breath was fire, every step burned. But Noah still needed him. So Max turned and limped home. The cave entrance swam in and out of Max's vision. His paws dragged. Each step left a smear of blood behind. But the baby was waiting. He crossed the threshold and collapsed beside the car seat. His breathing came in ragged gasps. His side oozed where the mountain lion's claws had torn through flesh and muscle. Pain throbbed through him like a drumbeat. Still he nudged Noah. Still he checked. The baby was alive, but barely. Skin, flushed eyelids, fluttering limbs limp. The fever was winning. Max laid his body close again, wrapping around the car seat like a living shield. But something deeper stirred now. Something urgent. The image of his old handler flashed through his mind, kneeling in the woods, showing Max certain leaves. Fever herbs, he had called them. Their scent was sharp and bitter, their shape broad and veined. Max's eyes blinked open. He remembered. With agonizing effort, he pulled himself up, dragging his heavy body across the ground outside the cave. The patch of herbs was nearby. He had passed it many times without thought. Now he searched with a surgeon's care, biting off what he needed, carrying it gently back in his teeth. Inside, he crushed the leaves slightly in his jaw, releasing the oils, then dropped them beside the baby. Their scent filled the air. It was a gamble, a memory, a prayer. Max slumped to the floor. He had done all he could. His body trembled as shock and blood loss took hold. Even the smallest movement sent pain rippling through him. His eyes remained on Noah. Always Noah. If this was where he would die, he would do so beside the life he had protected. Outside, the wind shifted. Voices again, closer this time, louder. And then Max. His ears twitched. A spark. He lifted his head, forced air into his lungs, barked. It came out broken and thin, but real. Another call. More voices. Max barked again. Then again. And then silence. He let his head fall. He had called. Now he waited. The footsteps came fast. Crunching leaves, snapping twigs, shouts. Over here, I heard it this way. Then, oh my God, in here. We found them. A beam of light cut through the cave's darkness. Max lifted his head weakly, eyes dull, but still fixed on Noah. His body trembled as he tried to rise to protect, but he couldn't. William Anderson fell to his knees at the entrance. His flashlight shook as it landed on the scene, Noah ghostly pale in the car seat. Max bloody broken lying beside him like a knight fallen at his post. "Max," William whispered, tears filling his voice. "You found him. You stayed." Michael Reeves, the truck driver who had caused the crash, was right behind. He said nothing, just dropped beside the baby, with trembling hands opening his emergency kit. His fingers were swift, trained. He checked Noah's pulse, touched the baby's forehead, muttered a quiet prayer. "He's alive," he said, barely breathing the words. "Fevered, dehydrated, but alive." William reached for Max. The dog didn't flinch. Instead, he wagged his tail, slow, weak, but unmistakable. Recognition. "Good boy," William said, tears running freely now. "You held on. You protected him, just like you were trained." Max's eyes met his. The tail wagged again. Then the dog's body slumped. A medic pushed into the cave, knelt beside the baby, began treatment. Fluids, oxygen, vital checks. Michael focused on Max. Wrapped gauze around the worst wounds, pressed cloth to the bleeding. His hands moved with urgency, but his voice was soft. "Hang in there, hero," he murmured. "You're not done yet. We're gonna fix you." Outside, the thrum of helicopter blades filled the sky. Rescue had arrived. Inside the cave, man and dog and child lay huddled in the shadows of survival. And though no one spoke it aloud, everyone felt the same fragile truth. They were barely in time. The helicopter landed in a nearby clearing rotor wash, flattening grass and shaking pine branches. Paramedics sprinted toward the cave with stretchers and gear, shouting over the noise. William didn't move from Noah's side. Michael stood beside Max, pressing gauze to a wound that refused to stop bleeding. The shepherd was barely conscious now, his sides rising in slow, shallow waves. Yet his eyes still tracked every motion, especially Noah's. "He's coming with us," William said firmly, when a paramedic hesitated at the sight of Max. "But sir, we don't usually transport. He's not just a dog. He saved my grandson's life. He comes." The pilot overheard. After one look at Max and the baby, he nodded. "We'll make it work." Inside, the chopper space was tight. Noah was secured first, a tiny form, swaddled in blankets connected to IVs and monitors. William took a seat beside him, refusing to let go of his hand. Max's stretcher was wedged onto the floor. Michael stayed crouched beside him, the entire flight, one hand resting on Max's flank, feeling every fragile breath. "You did good," Michael whispered through the roar. "You did better than all of us." Max's ears twitched weakly. His eyes never left the infant. They touched down at Asheville Regional Medical Center 20 minutes later. Doctors rushed to Noah, shouting orders, wheeling him through sliding glass doors that hissed open like the arms of salvation. William followed, never looking back. "What about the dog?" one nurse asked. "He's being transferred," the pilot replied. "Veterinary Trauma Center 3 blocks over. They're waiting." Michael climbed into the animal transport van with Max. He wouldn't let him go alone. As the doors closed, Michael leaned close and whispered, "Just hold on, Max. You're not just a hero. You're family now." The van pulled away from the hospital. Inside, Max lay still, but his chest rose, his heart beat. And as the city lights flickered against the windows, his ears perked just once at the distant sound of a child's voice, crying out for water. He had done it. He had kept the boy alive. Michael sat in the sterile white waiting room of the veterinary emergency center, still covered in dried blood, most of it Max's. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Time lost meaning. Doctors came and went. Somewhere across town, Noah was receiving fluids and antibiotics. He was stable, they said. A miracle. A fighter. But here Max was in surgery. Michael clutched the blanket they'd used as a stretcher. His eyes stayed fixed on the door. His heart hadn't stopped racing since they'd left the mountain. He had seen death in those woods, and he had seen devotion stronger than anything he'd ever known. 3 days, he kept thinking. 3 days that dog kept a baby alive. A nurse emerged finally. The lead vet followed her surgical mask hanging around her neck. He made it through the first operation, she said. Michael shot to his feet. He's critical, she said gently. The mountain lion wounds caused extensive internal damage. We've stabilized him for now. The next 24 hours will decide everything. Michael swallowed hard. Can I see him? She hesitated, then nodded. They led him into recovery. Max lay beneath blankets, an oxygen line beneath his nose, bandages wrapping his torso and leg. Machines beeped softly around him. His fur had been shaved in places exposing raw sutures. He looked so small. Michael knelt beside him and placed a hand gently on his head. You saved that boy, he whispered. No one else could have. Not the trucks. Not the teams. Not me. His voice cracked. I'll stay right here, just like you did. He sat down in the corner, refusing to leave. Nurses offered him water, a place to sleep. He declined. Across town, William was at Noah's side, the boy sleeping peacefully in the ICU fever, breaking his tiny hand wrapped around a stuffed lion someone had found at the crash site. The same lion Max had carried. 2 battles, 2 survivors. 1 night left to decide if both would live. Dawn crept over Asheville gold lights spilling through hospital windows and across the surgical steel of the veterinary center. Inside the recovery room, Max stirred. Michael had dozed off in the corner chair blanket still wrapped around his shoulders. But the soft shuffle of paws against metal tile woke him instantly. Max had lifted his head. Barely, but enough, Max Michael whispered, rushing to his side. The dog blinked slowly. Pain dulled his eyes, but recognition sparked there. A low breath escaped him, a sound between a sigh and a rumble. Michael laughed, choking on the sound. You're still with us. The vet entered moments later, eyes widening. Well, that's one determined dog, she said, smiling despite herself. He's responding to light movement. That's good. Very good. Back at the children's hospital, Noah had improved overnight. William sat beside his crib, telling him old stories in a soft voice. The doctors said he would make a full recovery. He's strong, one nurse told William. Someone really looked out for him. William smiled. Someone who used to be mine, and came back just in time. By midday, William walked into the veterinary center. He looked older now, eyes deeper, steps slower, but when he saw Max, something eased in his face. He approached quietly. Max turned his head. Good boy, William said, kneeling beside him. You didn't just save Noah. You saved me too. He reached out, placing a hand on Max's paw. The shepherd didn't pull away. You remember us, don't you? A faint tail wag answered. Not much, but it was enough. Michael stepped back, giving them space. The guilt still lived in his chest, heavy and sharp, but beside it now was something else. Purpose. Redemption. He looked at Max and whispered, You gave me a second chance too. In the days that followed news of the mountain, rescue spread. Newspapers called Max a hero. Reporters lined the hospital lawn. Offers of medals came. Donations poured in, for both child and dog. But in the quiet room where Max recovered, it was simple. Noah, healed and smiling, was finally brought in by William. The boy saw Max and reached out. Max lifted his head, eyes bright, and for the first time since the crash, he barked, soft, joyful. Home.